Welcome back. Welcome back. We are here again with another inciting conversation. And we have the one and only John Gooden with us.
How are we doing?
Great. It is great to be here. And thank you very much for gracing us with your presence. And trustfully, it's gonna be it's gonna be an exciting one, it's gonna be an interesting one, and we're gonna peel back some layers.
Cool.
So, I mean, for myself, I mean, one of the main reasons I've reached out, to yourself was, for me, you sort of embody at the moment, presenting and the play-by-play from a UK standpoint. It's been very top-heavy, apart from Dan Hardy. It's been very top-heavy in regards to the representation of sort of global MMA. So it's great to see you sort of really flourishing and bubbling. And now with the ESPN deal, it's really good to see, and the investment in regards to the PI institutes that's coming into the UK and stuff. I think it's an excellent look for UK MMA. And I can't wait for the journey to continue for 2019.
That's very kind of you to say. Yeah, I mean, listen, it's every year something new happens. I get surprised again, but just keep working hard. Don't take anything for granted. You never know when it's going to end. So I just keep on keeping on. I get these assignments, and I was worried about the ESPN deal at first because I didn't really know what that meant for me, and I felt like I'd got a decent foothold in with a few of the big wigs at Fox Sports over in the States. But yeah, the ESPN deal is offering up this traveling desk show. Those who watched UFC London would have noted that Michael Bisping was in with Karen Bryant, and I did a similar thing in Fortaleza. I went to Fortaleza and played the Karen Bryant role, if you like, and Dan was next to me there. So different opportunities, challenging myself in new ways, and that's what more can you ask for out of a career?
Oh, definitely. I mean, just let's actually rewind all the way back to the start, because obviously you've had a very varied background in regards to skill sets, etc. So how do we get from your electrical work, let's say, to to the love of mixed martial arts, to the point where you actually want to get involved in this capacity? Take us through that journey.
Yeah, sure. Well, many years ago, when I was in my early 20s, I did sort of have a stab at becoming a presenter. I was at the BBC for a little bit, but it never quite worked out for me. And if I'm honest, I was terrible. So I then kind of flip-flop careers a few times, and my dad had an electrical business, which you've noted, or certainly the electrical work. So I got really into business. I wanted to be a businessman, and like with anything that I do, I'm always hungry to learn. I don't have that fixed mindset. I'm wanting to change things up, take courses, and I keep starting again, and it's not something that I'm necessarily afraid of. So I spent a long time working with my dad in his business and trying to take that to new levels. But you have to have other things in life as well. And I've always been a sports person, from doing judo, karate, and other sports when I was a kid. And then through my teenage years was very much a heavy boxing and football focus. And then that sort of ended up translating into mixed martial arts in my late 20s. So I was an older statesman when I was starting out, which is so I was never going to become a world champion in mixed martial arts. But what it did is it allowed me to experience many different facets of the game. And it was at a time still when there was a massive misconception about the sport, the athletes within it. And my coaches were struggling financially. They're giving everything up for their own pursuits and to impart the knowledge to us, etc. So that was, as someone who'd been in business, was a little bit older, I could feel those struggles. And I just felt that it was very unfair for these guys who were so good at what they did that they were just never considered like other sports people, professional sports people. And again, cut a few layers out. That was part of the motivation. And then my coach put on his own show in Watford. And we had a female presenter come down one time and do a horrible job of representing the sport. And I kind of said to him, I mean, it wasn't her fault. I don't really know what they were trying to get out of it. But I just said to my coach, Dave Lee, give me a shot at that. I could give that a go. Back in the day, I wanted to do a bit of presenting. And he said, well, I've got no influence over the TV company, but why don't we start doing commentary on my shows? He said it would be good for the fighters just to have a little, just to colour in some of the action. And that's where it started. And from there, like I do with most things, as my friends and family might say, I'd just throw myself in. And where some people might just jump on the mic, I was looking at a fight card and finding ways in which I could visit the gyms. I'd go train with the guys, be sat on the mat, shooting the shit with these people and trying to understand them a bit more, particularly because it was amateur MMA work that you could talk about. And it was a way of me to become just use everything. Use all of the skills that you've acquired through life and put them together. And that's essentially what I've been doing with this. And that's kind of where it's.
Excellent. See, you've clearly had you've jumped in, as you say, head first of sorts and fully immersed yourself. And I think you've taken, I would say, a fairly unique approach of sorts, because people are quite paper heavy in regards to the research. With the age of modern technology and the internet, you can pretty much check people's bios out via ShareDoc, etc. But that is only very surface level. Having the opportunity to actually trade sweats and actually be there at the gym, talk to to the nutritionists, to the managers, to the coaches and stuff, gives you a bigger picture of the personality, because obviously it's not just about fighting, is it?
Well, that's exactly it, right? So on one level, it's not just about the fighting, and unless you give people a reason to support someone, it is just fighter X versus fighter Y in a cage. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that, because that's exciting for someone like me. But imagine if you then found out that they are a single parent, or they come from the same background that you did, they're ex-forces. There are so many narratives that we've seen over the years, and all of a sudden you're invested in that person, that man, that woman. You want to see them succeed, and you're going to give them the follow. You're going to check up on their fights. You might even go and watch, and that's where it's been at. And this is the other thing, I'm not saying that I don't consider myself special, and what I did was not by design. And what I mean by that was it just felt natural. In order to do my job properly, would be to go and meet these folk, and I wanted to. So people that, I don't mean to disrespect any of my colleagues, and when I say colleagues, I mean commentators across mixed martial arts. But if you're happy with just a bio page, then good for you. But I'm not. That bio page is, it is just the constant information that will exist throughout their career. What have they done camp to camp? And it's hard, when you're working with the UFC, you've now got international people, an international roster. They don't all speak English, but sometimes you've got to go after that shit. You've got to try and find someone that can communicate that with you. Like I had problems getting the story on Negumereanu, this Romanian kid who was fighting in London. And again, with Saparbeg Safarov, another fighter, I didn't know any of his teams. So trying to acquire that information was very, very difficult. But I feel like I'm letting people down if I don't tell their story. And I say this to fighters, I'm your mouthpiece. That walkout, when you burst through that curtain, I'm here to tell your story. So let me in. I don't want to give away secrets. I'm not controversial, and I'm not a journalist. But what do you want the world to know now? Right in that moment when you're walking to the octagon, what do you want people to know about you? Because that's, tell me a bunch of stuff and I'll tell you what resonates with me, and I'll get it back out there. That's kind of where I come at that part of my job.
And I think that's the excellent, you're providing an excellent service for the fighters and for potential casuals who won't be casuals, who will actually become fully fledged fans of sorts.
That's it.
You know, it's for everybody. It's for the fighters who aren't necessarily as verbal as a Conor McGregor, let's say.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, so to get involved into the actual fighters themselves, having that sort of medium to say, okay, well, you know, what's quite interesting about this character is he's actually a vegan.
Yeah.
Or, you know, something like that.
Yeah.
Which, okay, so we can now have some vegan followers, or we can have some vegetarian followers, etc.
Exactly that. Yeah, it's all about that. And as you say, it is kind of free advertising for these men and women. If they allow it, then I can go out there and I can tell people, you know, I say to people, are you fighting for a particular cause this time? Because I found out in the past, you know, after we've in post-fight interview, they say, oh, such and such, you know, passed away, or this charity was really close to me, and I'm donating money to that. But if they didn't get to that post-fight interview, then that might not have been heard. So we're very lucky as commentators, and we have the eyes and the ears of a lot of people at that point, and that's a responsibility that I don't take lightly. So yeah, that's kind of, that for me is the walkout bit, and that the human storytelling is what I'm very passionate about.
Right, and I think there's a good mixture between yourself and Dan on especially on the breakdowns, because it's quite lengthy as well, and I like the way you go into the specific detail and literally trying to break down each fighter with using their attributes. Is that something, that whole sort of, what's it called? Connected, is it, or something? What's it?
Sorry, the Inside the Octagon.
Inside the Octagon, pardon self. Who came up with that concept? Was that something you guys brought together to the UFC, or?
If I remember rightly, I think it was our old boss in the UK, and she would just see how Dan and I would interact, and she's like, we need to make a show out of this, because I'm a student of the game, and I go to Dan for a lot of the answers. And so I would kind of say to Dan, you know, what about this? What did you saw here? This was going on, and whatever. Why that? And what if you did this? And then it's evolved, really. I mean, it's definitely evolved from that. But essentially, that was where we were at. And then she was ex-football, so she knew about some of the technology that was available to the guys in the football world, and we acquired that with the famous screen. Like, the screen is more famous than I am in that little trio. So yeah, now we've got this big ass screen which Dan can use a lot of tools to obviously demonstrate what's going on. But yeah, it's very enjoyable. I'm very proud of that show, as is Dan. Dan has, I think it's fair to say, he's really established himself as the if not the front runner, one of the most prominent analysts in mixed martial arts, because he's got a regular spot in which he can show people his wisdom.
Yes, guaranteed. It's such a pity of sorts that he's had the injury and stuff, which is, I know there was some news, maybe was it a year ago or so, and he was maybe contemplating coming back to fighting. I think that would have been very entertaining and stuff. But I'm glad he's found his place. Whether he gets that itch again, or that itch is constantly still there, I would imagine as a fighter.
Yeah, it's still there. Yeah.
But it'd be great to definitely see him back in the.
I agree, for sure. Yeah.
So UFC wise, obviously you can't give away too much. I mean, what are the plans moving forward? Are we going to see anything more UK wise, shows, or little, just some more contents, etc., coming out from the UK? More.
Well, I don't know exactly. So they do things on a quarterly basis typically. So I know that I'm going to be working in Russia. And that's in terms of kind of any desk opportunity, any ESPN based work. Let's put it like that. Outside of that, I think we're seeing BT Sport are really now investing in the UK. So Dan has a show that I think it's called is it Open Mat with Dan Hardy, I think it is.
Yes.
Yeah. So Dan has that show that he's now got going on. So you can see that BT Sport are definitely trying to not only push things out digitally, which I think they do a fantastic job of. I think they've got a really good social media thing going on there. The guys in that team are excellent. But now it's people down the hallway in broadcasting as well. So there's opportunities for shoulder programming in our sport for sure. And yeah, there's Dan's is like a post-fight show, I think. So there's the first episode of that is now live for people to go and watch. So that's what's going on there. I don't know what else is going on. I'm always pushing the UFC for more content and to do more stuff. So I'll be throwing stuff their way. But at the same time, both Dan and I have our own channels as well. And even when the UFC don't pick up on things like, for example, the Arnold Allen documentary that I did which came out just before London, then we'll find a way to get it out there. I love working with the UFC, and I would love everything that I do to be channeled through them, because they're just such a, going back to that free advertising thing, they're just such a massive platform. So it allows more and more people to see whatever it is the content that we've created. So I'd love to keep funneling it that way. But at the same time, if it's not for them, then I still think that the stuff that I'm involved with, it will resonate with people. Some people will like it. So yeah, I'll keep on keeping on as I always do, trying to create different stuff.
Well, with that documentary, I've clearly missed that. So, and for other people who have missed that documentary, where can it be found, and what is the documentary about?
So I've had the idea for a while of really doing a deep dive with fighters. So not just, we see quite a bit. So I do a lot of producing work for the UFC. So most of the time over the last few years, if you've seen a European fighter that's been in a countdown show or in a main event, the likelihood is I would have been the guy who produced that. So I often go out with these fighters, and we get a couple of days, and we have to fit the formula for what UFC are trying to achieve. But what I wanted was really an intimate look at some of these fighters. So I did one with Darren Till, which did go on UFC Fight Pass and did really, really well. So I went and watched Darren train. Then we jumped in my car. We went to the spot where he grew up. And we then sat down in his local cafe, and we just spoke about, everything from apparently when he used to wrap his hands watching the Rocky film Shadowboxing when he was a kid, to then jumping out of his bedroom window to go hit the bag, all the way through to, his last fight in the UFC. So really it was taking that formula, and I went and saw Arnold Allen, and we hung out at his house, and his dad's a strongman, professional strongman. His brother's a professional strongman as well. And they got this mad rig in their garden, and he showed me all around that. And then I was, went into his bedroom and saw all of his trophies of all of his family have got in there. And then when I saw him train, went down to Felixstowe beachfront. So yeah, just spent the day with Arnie, and it's evergreen, this stuff really. It's okay. We spoke about his last fight, which is now the fight before last, and that wicked choke that he did over Mads Burnell, but it's still pretty relevant. It's not all geared up towards just that London fight, because that hadn't even been made when I went over and saw him. So yeah, that one's on the Fight Disciples channel. I'm probably going to put it up on my own channel as well soon, The Journey of Discovery with John Gooden. So either way, you'll be able to cross-link it.
Yes, links will be below.
Thank you very much.
No, that's great. So in essence, you're taking a snapshot of a career's, of a fighter's career of sorts. I think that's a really good program to do.
Yeah, when these guys go on a podcast, or when these guys go on a show, then a lot of the time now, there's so much news in mixed martial arts. It's, people are trying to encapsulate what's happening in that moment there. But
yes,
and there's nothing wrong in that. But what I was trying to do was, okay, but who are you though? What do you really like, and where are you from? What does a day look like for you, and who are the people around you? And that then allows me to get a greater sense of who they are, and I'd like to think I've managed to build a set of skills now where I can get people to open up a little bit and see value in maybe having a conversation with someone like me. So yeah, I enjoy them.
excellent, excellent. So let's get into yourself in a bit more detail. I've noticed that you are a vegan as well.
Yeah, I am. Yeah.
So was you born and raised, sorry?
Oh, no, absolutely not. No. I'm just like your typical guy from Hertfordshire, North London. In that sense, it was growing up. It was, a whole range of different stuff. Normal Sunday roasts and that kind of thing. On the other side of the family, my mum's Arabic or my grand's Arabic, so we'd be having all kinds of Arabic curries and things of that nature. So, and then, I was out every Monday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, kicking around Watford and certain areas, finishing the night off with fried chicken or not so much a kebab, not like a doner meat kebab, maybe a little grilled chicken.
Yeah.
But yeah, about probably 6 years ago now, something like that. This might be my 6th year, 5, 6 years. I blew my back out really bad in training. I wasn't able to properly train in martial arts for about 5 years, and it hit me pretty hard. So I wasn't able to do anything, and it was affecting everything, like my work and all of that kind of stuff. So I was trying to heal myself in as many different ways as I could. And one of the only things that you can do if you can't move is dictate what you eat and drink. And I was already pretty clean. I didn't have dairy. I'd heard a lot of bad stuff about dairy anyway. But then I came across a lot of Eastern prophecies and philosophies, I should say, where it's more alkaline and I don't consume a lot of meat and they would repair a bit quicker. And then I came across a guy called Gary Yourofsky, who's an animal activist, and he gave this very rousing speech to a college in America.
I think I've seen that video, sir.
Oh my God, man. It just blew me away. And I just sat there crying, angry. And I thought, I can't be so moved by this in all of those different emotions and then just crack on like I haven't seen this. And so I basically went downstairs and cleared out the cupboards, cleared out the fridge, cleared out the cupboards. The wife was going crazy. But,
I bet.
it was just right there in that moment. I felt that that's what I had to do and going, I don't tend to do things by halves. So that was it. From that point on, that was the direction that I was going to take. And there was no transitional period. There was no flip-flopping. It was there.
Straight and cold turkey.
I've not had meat in all of that time. Yeah. So it's been a minute now.
Excellent. Well, commend you for that. I haven't personally been able to do that currently. I'm doing it in stages. So trustfully, I'll get to the point where you are.
Listen, it's a personal journey, right? People do it for different reasons. And, I'm not, as much as Dan tries to tease me that I'm militant vegan, I'm militant with myself. I don't bend the rules for myself. I live by this because I believe that we don't need to consume these products and wear skins and all of that kind of stuff. I just don't think you do. I'm like, if you want to talk to me about it, I'm happy to talk to you about it. But otherwise, I'm busy, man. I'll just crack on. I don't need to be getting up there on my soapbox. And there are plenty of other people that are way better at doing that than I am anyway. So yeah, I find it rewarding in some senses, and I feel like it's the right thing to do for the future and for our animal friends.
Agreed. So did she come kicking and screaming, or did she see the value in your proposition?
Yeah, well, she eats fish every now and then, but she's very careful about, she won't just go and get any old fish and eggs. But that hasn't always been the case. You know, for most of the time, she is vegan, and we now have a little baby, and she's not vegan. It's very difficult to try and manage that process effectively from, you know, if they're not breastfeeding or combination feeding, and we've had her on goat's milk. Also, because of allergies, I think it's important to introduce certain food types like egg. Yeah, well, just to see, because you don't want them trying something when they're not with their parents a few years down the line and all the rest of it. So she hasn't eaten meat, and I think we're both in agreement that she doesn't need to eat meat. But I think it won't be long before we my wife gives her some fish, and yeah, it's all good.
Definitely, and trust me, when she gets to the age where she's able to make her own decisions, she can say, you know what, I want to have some flesh, or she can say, I'm happy with this lifestyle. It's all about choices ultimately. If you can lay that foundation initially, then I commend, hats off for that. So have you had much contact with the Diaz brothers?
I have not. I met Nick. Yeah, I met Nick Diaz in passing one time, but we weren't talking about that. And from what I understand, that's very much a performance-based choice, and I think they are vegetarian. I know Jake Shields is vegetarian. I think they're vegetarian/vegan during fight camp. So it's not. They probably don't come at this from the same aspect as what I do. They're plant-based when they're cutting weight, I believe. So I'm not too sure. But hey, listen, whatever brings you to reducing your consumption of meat and therefore the positive effects of that, then all power to you. It's even people starting to consider their choices. As soon as you do that and you're more mindful of what you're eating, how it's getting to your plate and whatever, if you understand it and you still choose to go on, then, you know, that's up to you. But I think it's important that people understand everything, acquire that information rather than just ignoring it like it doesn't happen, and then make your choice. And you might make some more informed decisions and eat less of this and that, and ask for higher standards across, you know, the world, the industries in which we're, you know, giving all of our money to.
Totally. How to get as much information as possible so you can make informed decisions is definitely the way forward.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't think people really fully take into consideration the amount of energy and water and CO2 it takes to produce farm animals.
I kind of think if an alien dropped down and you explained, like, basically the process of, okay, so what do you guys eat then? What do you know, well, what we do is we take all the stuff that gives us oxygen and the water that we need and all of this land to grow stuff, and we rinse it and we give it to that animal there to get an even smaller bite. You know, well, why would you do that? So I think there's a simple equation there that doesn't seem to add up. But, you know, it's the biggest. Energy and food agriculture is the most powerful are the most powerful businesses in the world.
100%. And trustfully, with people making, I guess, looking into things, questioning. I mean, it's you don't need to question everything, but just question, you know, what is the value of having farmed fish versus having just normal fish? You know, what does farm fish look like? What are the conditions they're kept in? What are they actually fed?
Yeah,
these sort of questions, and you can then say, actually, I'm going to continue, or maybe I shouldn't have this type of produce.
Yeah, it's crazy. And when you get into it, like I went through that whole process, and I think I found out with like shrimps, they remove the left eye in the farms because it, for some reason, is it to do with the reproductive system or something crazy?
Yeah.
But it's just some of the madness that goes on. And then when you think about things like farmed fish, where they're just go and have a look at your goldfish in a bowl, sitting in there just eating its own shit all day. So nutritionally, where you get, how is that going to be really good for you? I mean, it's just not, you know. And then the oceans are a pretty dire place these days. Us humans have done a real good job of messing with that one. So the fish, yeah, I feel, yeah, we're not good to this planet. We're really not.
No, but it seems like the youth are taking, and obviously some people who are in, you know, the positions that they are to try and make a change are noticing, and you know, I mean, I'm sure there's been a maybe this is about 2 or 3 months old, but the scientists have created that enzyme that was able to eat plastic.
Oh,
Did you hear
wow.
about that?
No, I did not, but that's a good move.
And apparently, do you remember we had that plastic island in the ocean?
Yeah.
They're supposed to be using it or have used it on that mess.
Right. Okay. I just hope there's no like negative thing with this. Yeah, with this enzyme, it's almost like one problem leads to another. But I'm not going to be negative about it. It sounds good. Yeah, the plastics is a big problem. We need to solve that. As he said, yeah, and it's funny because we went to. I'm going to sound so elitist now, but we were out with the baby, and Marks and Spencer's was the store that we ended up in, and pretty much everything that they have there is in plastic containers.
Yes.
There's not a lot of stuff that you can put into a paper bag. And when I came back, I've just looked at the amount of plastic that is in our fridge. I'm not proud of it. It's, you know, sometimes you've got to be kind to yourself, because if you always beating yourself up, it takes away the positive that you're trying to do. So you know, it's not every time that we're like this, but it's definitely something that the waste is something that I would like to address when I have a bit more time of how to work it out, and the stores that we could go to, you know, reduce our load on that side of things.
Well, I think government are looking into it because, you know, the extra layers. I mean, take food out of it. Let's just look at just basic products like our electrical products or toys for children.
Yeah.
How many layers of cardboard, plastic ties and this and that? Yeah. You take about 10 minutes just to unwrap the thing before you've even taken.
And then you've got a big lump of plastic. We were a bit funny. My family got a little scared about all of that because we said we didn't want a great deal of plastic toys. We've got quite a few wooden toys for our baby, but you can't escape the plastic. And actually, you know, it's very, very easy to clean, and it's hard to have modern looking stuff which, you know, does cool shit that is wooden. So you're not getting away from it, and there's a place. But again, we've tried to reduce the amount of plastic that is in our home, including what we're doing with the baby as well.
Clearly taking a sensible, pragmatic view on health and life, and it's refreshing to see people you know, being it's responsible. It's very responsible to do such, to take stock of yourself and to take these sort of measures, because it, you know, especially if you've got children, it's very important.
I think you got to lead, you know, you got to lead by example, and you don't want to be a hypocrite all the time. So there's definitely stuff that we can all do. Like, there are easy wins out there. You just got to go over that, got to go after those easy wins. And that's, for me, that's one of them.
Definitely. So we've not recently just had UFC London.
Yeah.
Amazing card. I don't think there was a boring fight on there at all. I think every fighter really laid it all on the line.
Yeah.
To be fair, I think that's the best London card outside Bisping's performance against Anderson. That is a real standout performance. I think that's the best card that the UFC has put on in the UK so far.
Yeah, a lot of fans were saying that. I was trying to work it out, because a lot of the people that were on this card were fighters that have been on previous cards, and I was sitting there scratching my head going, the fans really weren't happy about cards beforehand. Why are they suddenly now happy with a crop of guys that have been here before? And we had a lot of Europeans fighting, you know, Europeans.
Yeah.
And in the past, that's been called like a glorified BAMMA or Cage Warriors card, which I thought was a little unkind to the fighters, because they'd done the hard yards in those organizations and had managed to get promoted from there, if you like, and were now with the elite organization. But then I considered, you had two guys on that card that had fought for the world title in Özdemir and Darren Till. Then you get Jorge Masvidal, who's not only is a bit of a legend within our sport of mixed martial arts, but outside too. And then also our European fighters have done a bloody good job of elevating themselves in the last, 12, 24 months, so that they are now bigger stars. The win streaks, I didn't have a chance to do it in the end, but I wanted to add up the win streaks for a lot of the fighters on the card, because there were so many, not even just like back-to-back fights. We're talking like 4, 6, Arnold Allen, Leon Edwards type runs. And you're like, these guys are on some almost record-breaking streaks. So, yeah, it was good. And I'm really pleased for the fighters as well, because they felt that it was big. It felt like it was a pay-per-view card over here. So much media, fans everywhere. And it makes my job easier, but it's not about me. I love the fact that they were digging it for the fighters themselves. And I think that's why they saw what they saw in the performances.
I think that clearly the fighters were feeding off the energy of the crowd, without a doubt.
That's exactly it. There are some fighters out there that completely block that out, but there are definitely other fighters that it will make them, 1.5 times stronger, or the other way. And the crowd was mental. Really surprised me. Gunnar Nelson versus Leon Edwards really surprised me. And I can tell by the accents that I'm listening to right now. But that, for me, I knew that Nelson was going to be popular, and I knew that there were a lot of Icelandic folk in the crowd as well, and they make themselves like 10-1 in terms of volume, especially with that Viking chant. But I didn't expect Leon to get booed. And I think it was more to do with the Darren Till situation than it was anything to do with Gunnar Nelson. But kind of upset me. But I was very proud of, listen to me, I'm part of his camp. But I was very proud of Leon, as I would be for any fighter. Let me just say that, of the way he reacted in it, and he didn't let that negatively impact his performance. Again, it just shows me he has the credentials to be a champion.
That performance was, especially against the opponent, I thought, as discussing earlier, I thought that Rocky would have to come out and, in essence, stuff a few takedowns, or a lot of takedowns.
Yeah.
And strike. Simply just strike with him. I had no idea that he would out-gunner Gunner, in essence.
Yeah, well, from what I got between, I think it was the first and second round, Dave, one of his coaches, was saying, okay, you've had your fun with the grappling. Now let's get back to the game plan. So I don't think they ever really had this game plan of grappling. And I think I said it in commentary at the time. I wonder how much of it was ego. And I wonder if Leon, when he finally got into the octagon, shared that strategy. I don't know whether he, to a point, because he kept saying to me, I want to answer questions in this fight. I'm going to answer questions. People are doubting my ground game. I'm going to answer questions. So it was like, okay, it sounds like the sensible thing to do would be to strike, but you're not on board with that because you want to make a point here. And make a point he did. I thought, I came down to Birmingham and I saw him training, and I think he's got a really nice grappling game for mixed martial arts, and I thought that he would be good, but Gunnar Nelson is next level good when it comes to that kind of stuff. And just to put my point on this, I think Gunnar Nelson is one of the toughest fights for anyone in the top 10 because of his style. I think his style is hard for everyone. Wrestlers are going to want to take him down. Do you really want to go down onto the mat with Gunnar Nelson? You definitely don't want to be on the bottom with Gunnar Nelson. And there's a chance of that happening. Strikers obviously don't want to fight someone who's going to take them down. So he's a bad matchup for everyone in that top 10. And Leon did brilliant job of overcoming that.
100%. I think everyone was expecting what Gunnar did on his last outing with Cowboy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And no, Leon's not that guy. He's way more measured than Oliveira, way more measured. So I knew that he wasn't going to allow himself to, get wild in there. We haven't seen him get wild yet. From spending time with him, it's just not in his character. He's one of the most professional guys, and just he's pretty emotionless, if that makes sense. And I don't mean that in like a disrespectful way. I think he does a really good job of maintaining this presence of mind throughout training camp, through fight week and the fight, to be able to really express himself and do the job that he needs to do, to keep going towards getting recognized as one of the best in the world at what he does. And hopefully he gets that title shot in the future.
Definitely. I think you hit the nail on the head. Professional. He conducts himself, especially, unfortunately, at the end, as the videos are viral and all of the crazy memes, which I think are a bit distasteful to a point, but I understand people's humors. The 3-piece thing. From what I saw in the video, didn't he only strike? He struck him twice, didn't he?
Well, I mean, I've seen it a couple of times as well. I mean, Jorge was saying whether he feels he landed that third or not. But yeah, it's the thing I would say is I'd just gone backstage as that was all being broken apart, so I didn't see what had happened, but I saw the aftermath. And as I was going back there, literally, I was now behind Jorge and his team. So I could see Leon's guys super upset, shouting over. And I eventually I went and spoke to Jorge. And honestly, it was like his heart rate didn't jump up a beat. It was nothing. And the way I explain this is whenever I've been in a situation, or friends of mine have been in a situation that you're involved in, and something like that's happened, you get wide-eyed and you get kind of darty, like you're looking for the danger in every corner of the room. He was having a chat with me like we were just shooting the breeze. He's so comfortable in that kind of stuff, which is just so scary. But that was how he was all fight week. It was almost like he was a bit too relaxed for my liking, but that's how he is. And I've met him before. I called his fight against Henderson. But it's, all of that stuff's unfortunate. And I don't think Leon's not being himself when he has an opportunity to speak his mind. He is doing that. And Jorge, obviously culturally different. He's not appreciated what Leon had said when he was passing.
Yeah.
And then it's all kicked off. But, I think it's very unfortunate because we talk about this a lot more than we do about the performances, and puts the sport in a bad light. It's just one of those, isn't it? But on the flip side, they might make that fight, and that's a good fight, and that essentially is what Leon wanted. Mm-hmm. And so if he goes out there and he beats Jorge Masvidal, then he's right there.
Exactly. It's unfortunately, fortunately, it wasn't like the Khabib and Conor stuff. It wasn't as wild as that. It's very similar. It's very similar. It did put a dampener, obviously, on the victory for Rocky. He left and came straight back up to Brum after that, have a chance to enjoy it. So that sort of all been avoided. I think, I'm not a UFC sort of worker or anything like that, but I'm thinking, how were there not security or members of staff that were not there to stop that altercation from taking place? It should have been only there. It shouldn't have been got to the point where, two prize fighters are throwing down. This is not 1990. This is not the early 2000s. This is 2019 now.
Dana White has said as much. So, he's the boss and that's how he feels. I think it's, it is. It's just, as you say, it's very unfortunate. And I think that they'll make sure that kind of thing never happens again. That's one thing that the UFC do is they're one of the quickest learning organizations out there, regardless of whatever business it is. And that's why they keep on improving and growing. So they'll learn from that, and they'll make sure that this doesn't happen again.
Definitely. I mean, again, excellent performance from Jorge Masvidal and from Leon Edwards. You called out the winner of either. We all, I guess, thought that Till would win that fight, but Jorge came and delivered that devastating knockout. Trustfully,
yeah. I didn't think it would go down like that.
No.
I always have in my mind that, if Till wins, probably wins by knockout. Unlikely he's going to win by submission. If Masvidal wins, unlikely he'll submit Darren Till. I don't think that, but he might have outpointed him. Very good mixed martial arts game, very good on a single, and a combination high volume striker.
Yes.
But I didn't expect him to do what he did. I really didn't. And that was one of the worst knockouts, by the way, that I've seen in the UFC. So beautiful for Jorge, really bad if you're a Darren Till fan. And there was a moment there where you got a guy who's out on the canvas and getting medical attention, and it's we want these athletes to be. It's part of the game. It is, but I was just crossing I'm like, I hope he's okay. I hope he's okay. And he's all good. I was in touch with his coach that night, and he had all of the precautionary stuff done, and he walked out of hospital, and he's all good.
That's great to hear. I was just going to say, trustfully, he's all well. I think, and I'm sure this was, I should say, spoken of as per his last outing with Tyron Woodley about him going up to 185. And I think we can see echoes of this with the TJ when he went down in weight. This sometimes of sorts, and this isn't to take anything away from the fighters at all, but when you're depleting one's body of water and you're reducing it down to cut weight to get to these weights, you can't just say to your body, I just want water to go from my lower half underneath my neck and the water and the cerebral fluid surrounding my brain. You just stay where it is. You just stay where you are normally. And I just want to spot reduce weight, water wise. So this, in my opinion, my humble opinion, I think the weight cut is having a detrimental and a dramatic effect on the fighter's health in regards to these KOs, because this is becoming almost, if he has a third fight, and trust me, I'm not speaking this into existence, and we have another incident like this, should he really be, really considering doing this still?
Oh, I think that I think we're way too premature in talking about that, because he's still a young man. It's a very individual thing. I've had many conversations with athletes, particularly when you're speaking to guys in North America, where culturally it's way more accepted than over here. And what I mean by that is it's a learned behavior over here in Europe, whereas in America, because of the wrestling program, it's very much a cultural thing where weight cutting's been a part of just the course. And with the IMAF guys coming in, I think it's that a lot of them are judo based, and they're trying to change that culture from an amateur level where fighters aren't cutting the weights, but they're still probably in gyms with pro fighters that are cutting weights and will espouse that it is giving them an advantage. So if you do some people will say if you do weight cutting correctly, then you're all good. There are people, hopefully not at the UFC level, but I'm sure there are, there's probably the odd one or two. There are some in a small number that don't do weight cutting as effectively. And then stuff happens during camp. You break a foot, you can't go out and hit the road, and then that weight cut becomes even more dramatic. So these days it's getting a lot better, and they're building data though now. This is what's important, is we're still very young as a sport. We're still trying to figure out what the best methods are. And again, going back to the UFC will learn, fighters are learning all the time, the sport's learning. So I don't know the scientific facts behind, a good weight cut. I know good versus bad is bad for everyone, but if you do a weight cut really very well, then what are you missing out in that sense? I don't know. I know rehydration. You can't just go and rehydrate with water. I know that much. You have to rehydrate effectively with all sorts of
minerals and electrolytes, etc.
Exactly that. So there are good and bad ways of doing this, but I'd like to think at the highest level, at the UFC level, then people are they know about this stuff. But yeah, data is going to be key. Education is key, and I think that the sport will develop. Will weight cutting go away? I really don't know. Probably not in my lifetime with the sport, but we are seeing an increasing amount of people fighting at a more natural weight. Anthony Smith, Thiago Santos, there are two guys that are popping right now that will talk about how much easier life is. So if you have guys like that finding a lot of success, then that will change the crowd, I think.
Could buck the trend most definitely. And also, I mean, I think Mr. Rogan has spoken about this a few times, and I've noted it as well. One Championships program in regards to the hydration tests and
I've
testing
heard about
athletes.
This, yeah, but they're not very. Someone came back at them recently and just said they don't disclose the information. They're just not very transparent with it.
Oh,
so it's not like we're seeing these results. So if they're coming in and they're making this log throughout the week or whatever it might be, I don't know a great deal about it. So I'll just say that straight off the bat. But unless you're divulging all of those results so that they can be seen, then it's like, what are you hiding? So I think the next level would be to fully publish that so that everyone can see the data. Full transparency will always stop you from, being criticised.
Definitely.
But if from what I'm hearing, and it's secondhand information, I appreciate what they're trying to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think in I wouldn't say in an ideal world, but I think from just a health and safety standpoint, I think for all fighters, I think 10 pounds at the very most, either side of their body weight, should be a more than enough advantage for fighters to be successful in their chosen combat sports sort of arena. But
yeah, it needs to be percentages though, because 10 pounds to a flyweight is different to 10 pounds to a light heavyweight. So I think they need to find what that percentage of body weight is if they're going to do it, and then monitor it and regulate it from there. But it's a contentious subject for sure.
What are your views on the new strap, the new design UFC belt?
Yeah, I like it. I think, that I don't really get I don't get romanticized by that side of it, like the material side of it, as much as what other people do. I think it looks really, really nice, but I didn't see a great deal wrong with the last belt. I think it's the mystique of having a UFC belt. It's the prestige of what it represents rather than what it actually is. But I do, of course, I look at these things. I look at the posters, and some of them I think are absolutely banging. And then you look at like the new belt, and I'm like, oh, I like what they've done there. It was quite clean, defined lines. But yeah, I mean, the fighters, they're not in this to get version 1 or 2 of the belt. They're in it to get that belt. And if that shit was their worst color, they're still going to put it up on their wall. It's the UFC belt that represents something. So I think I'm less about that. I'm still talking about it in that sense.
Yes, definitely. I mean, to be fair, when they was doing those little hints on social media and showing little bits and pieces of it, I was thinking, I wonder what it's going to actually look like. I like the idea of the different colored stones in there, etc.
Yeah.
And then when it was presented, it did kind of at first look like almost like Power Rangery, I guess. I've heard a lot of people sort of describe it.
Right.
But I will say, after me seeing it a few times, it's definitely grown on me. I didn't like it initially, but I think, yeah, upon further examination and see people actually wearing it and being presented, I think it's a good choice. It marks a change of era of sorts. We had the very first belt, which looked quite amateurish of sorts, but for the era and for the time, it looked well. And then we had Generation 2. I think this is what Generation 3 now we're on, aren't we, belt-wise?
Right. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and it's always in the eye of the beholder, right? Everyone's going to enjoy something different. So they're never going to be able to please everyone. That's the thing. They'll always try the UFC. They'll do what they feel is best, but it's very difficult to please the masses.
Definitely. And I've just heard some unfortunate news today regarding TJ Dillashaw.
Yeah, I saw that.
That is so unfortunate, because I thought we was going to have they was going to run that back with Cejudo and stuff.
Yeah. I mean, he's come out, and I think he threw that news out there before the authorities did. It's just, until further details come out, I don't really know what to make of it. It's very unfortunate, especially, I would imagine that TJ has access to just so much. I don't know. I just can't imagine the guy.
I know.
These athletes are tested so hard. There's a massive hangover from the supplements world. There really is. And I was actually with a fighter that was checking out some hydration salts it wasn't with a fighter, it was with his team, because they were from out of town in London, and they pulled Jeff Nowitzki over, and Jeff literally made time in that moment to go and see those guys, go through the ingredients, and then, and just make sure that everything was good, and told them, just keep a little bit of that as well, keep a little bit in the bottom, just in case anything, even though it's a trusted source, this, that, and the other, then it can be tested at a later stage. So the UFC are trying to help these athletes all the way through. It's just, I think sometimes, and I don't know about TJ's case, by the way, sometimes they're failed by their suppliers, and that's it's awful, man. It's going to take. We've seen it.
It's so worrying at this high level of, the creme de la creme in essence. And we've had numerous people, we had the picogram saga with Mr. Jones and stuff. It's almost like, as a fighter, what do you do? I mean, as you're saying, you go to Jeff Nowitzki, and you save little portions of the supplements. But maybe, and maybe it's impossible to do this, but maybe fighters shouldn't be taking any form of supplements at all if they're going to be busted like this.
That's what Demetrius Johnson's approach used to be. It's like, don't do it. I just don't do it. I think culturally we're in a world where everything is, we kind of want to get there a little bit quicker. You want to recover quicker, and that everyone else is taking. I've got to be careful here. I don't mean that everyone else is taking bad stuff, but everyone else is taking a protein shake to help boost their recovery, or whatever it might be. There's way more to it than just protein. Sometimes, like BCAAs and stuff like that. So there's just that pressure. Demetrius Johnson, I think, and I believe I'm right in saying that. I definitely heard an interview, and it was probably a few years ago now, but just a whole foods diet. That's what he was doing, just making sure he had good quality food, and he was eating at the right times and the right stuff applicable to what his activities were. And he was a clean athlete, but you're always trying to get like 1% at this level can make you the champion. So you're always going to go after that. It's just, again, it just goes back to it, doesn't it? And it's all such a young sport, and that is not a very well regulated industry, supplementation. But good luck trying to shut down the cowboys in that area.
Totally.
See a lot of even like white labeling. You can go to, there'd be one company that produces all of this stuff, but there's four different different brands that are coming out of that same place, and it's very difficult to try and get a handle on that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, it's about accreditations. If you're going to go to an organization, like for instance, you're saying, making products, etc., you need to make sure that they've got the correct ISO accreditations and all of that kind of stuff, rather than just willy-nilly saying, okay, I want to produce a product and put it on the market. What are your processes and procedures to make sure there's no cross-contamination, etc.? Because it's clear with this picogram thing with Mr. Jones that it's some kind of cross-contamination and metabolites and stuff which are remaining in the body. It's all of this stuff which, people have almost have to become scientists to understand, what's going on, when it shouldn't this just be about fighting. As long as no one's doing illegal steroids and stuff, then you should be able to fight. That should be it.
I think it was Tim Means that's got an ongoing legal case with a supplementation company because he feels like they've robbed him of X amount of months of his career, and then your reputation gets tarnished sometimes as well. It's really unfortunate, but what can you do? It's very difficult. It's one of the first things that a pro fighter looks for when he's getting sponsored. He wants help with his camps, but it's like, can I get a supplement sponsor? And you get it. Listen, I've got someone that sponsors me, but I get my products through a source as well. And so if you're a fighter, you're definitely going to take it because, you're going to try and do what you think's healthy for your body. And again, like culturally, everyone else is doing it. And it's really tough. That is it's a wild world, that supplementation industry. And those that have been burned in that way, I feel so sorry for them. I really do. And I just don't know what the solution is there. You've got to keep using, these tried and tested products and manufacturers. Keep going to the UFC and make sure it's on, if you can get any further clarification from them. And after that, there's not a lot more that you can do.
Do your due diligence. That's all you can, as you say, do due diligence, keep samples, etc. Obviously don't complete this, I totally agree. Something needs to be done. Some kind of regulations, whether the UFC themselves maybe go into the supplement market.
Yeah, I think, but that's, again, but then they'd probably get told off for doing that, wouldn't they? Because it's then a monopoly. Again, it's you're like, well, you're going to use our stuff. And then that takes some of these fighters will get massive appearance money for going to fitness expos on the back of these supplement deals that they've got. So it's, I know what you're saying. And maybe they will. They maybe offer it as an option that fighters can take. But again, it's a bit like food. That will be the next thing. It'll be coming through in your chicken or something like that.
Or you get a little chip and it's slowly released over a year period or something.
That's it. Oh, it's way too much science for me, for sure.
Definitely. John, it's been a pleasure. It's been a very insightful and interesting conversation. Thank you very much. Please do give out all of your social medias, how people can get in contact with you.
Yeah, thank you very much. So I'm mostly John Gooden UK. That's Twitter and Instagram. And if I can give one plug, so I'm doing a 90-mile walk in a couple of weeks. We're trying to raise awareness for mental health issues. We're going to be doing that across the south coast of the UK. We have a GoFundMe page. It's the Talking Therapist, the Walking Therapist. My God, sorry, it's a long day. It's the Walking Therapist on GoFundMe. I'm not a therapist. I'm doing it with 3 other people. We're inviting people to come along, and we just want to get our walk, and the intentions of it is to raise awareness, and we're raising money for young minds. So that's really that's the big thing that I'm interested in really pushing right now. It's a cause close to my heart. I think most of us have been touched by mental health issues with those around us, and it's, as men, it's definitely something that we need to tackle. So please, go check it out. It's on my social media. I'm all across it at the moment, so you can keep track of that. Any donations are gratefully received. We're trying to raise £10,000, which is ambitious, but hopefully if all of my followers or half my followers gave like a pound, I think we'd get there. So
we're going to do it. Let's be optimistic, and I will put the link below.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
We'll be optimistic, and we will exceed the 10,000 mark, because as you say, that is something that does touch a wide section of society.
Yeah, it does.
A lot of society, unfortunately, don't understand, the implications and what happens with mental illness. So I do think it's a very noble cause. Yeah. I will post that as well on my social medias as well.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, John. And if you've got any up and coming news and events, we will more than welcome you back on for the broadcast.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for your time.
Nice one. Thank you. Cheers.